Okay, for this explainer, we're about to become detectives. Our crime scene? It's a single ancient page of the Talmud. And our mission is to solve a legal mystery that has puzzled scholars for centuries. In the process, we're going to uncover something truly fascinating about how law, language, and tradition actually work. So, before we start examining the evidence, we need to understand the lay of the land. The laws of kosher slaughter, or shechitah, they aren't just some vague guidelines. We're talking about an ancient and incredibly specific legal code, with rules that have been studied and followed for millennia. And these principles, they are famously precise. The knife has to be sharper than a surgeon's scalpel, with not even a single tiny nick. The cut has to be this one continuous smooth motion, no stopping, no hacking. And, most important for our investigation today, the cut has to be made at the neck.
And that's our central question. I mean, it seems obvious to us now, but the Bible, the foundational legal text, it never actually comes out and says slaughter the animal at its neck. So how in the world did this become the absolute non-negotiable law? Let's follow the clues.
All right, our case file opens with the Mishna. This is a core text of Jewish law put together around the year 200 CE. It lays out all the established laws, the what, but it doesn't always get into the why, so this is our primary piece of evidence. Now, before we go any further, there's a key term from our case file you've got to know, simanim. It's the Hebrew word for the two critical tubes in the neck, the windpipe and the gullet. Keep this word in mind, because literally everything hinges on cutting them. The Mishna is crystal clear on the procedure. For a bird, you've got to sever the majority of at least one of those simanim. For a bigger animal, it has to be the majority of both. The rules are unbelievably specific, right? But they still don't answer our main question. And this is where the mystery really gets going. The Mishna states this law like everybody already knows it. But where's the source? Where is the verse in the Bible that gives the green light for this very specific spot for the cut? The sages of the Talmud, they have to find it. This brings us to the Gemara, which is this massive commentary on the Mishnah. And here, the sages act like these brilliant detectives, just poring over the biblical text, hunting for any little hint, any clue at all that could be the source for this huge law. So our first detective, a sage named Rav Kahana, he steps forward with a theory. He points to a verse in Leviticus, and the key word is v'shachat, which means, and he shall slaughter. But, he argues, the real clue isn't what the word means on the surface. Nope, it's hidden inside the word itself. Okay, this is where the detective work gets fascinating. Rav Kahana comes up with this brilliant piece of wordplay. He suggests breaking the word vashhat into two parts and reading it not as slaughter, but as shahatehu, which means where it bends, purify it. So what part of an animal can be both straight and can bend? The neck. It is an incredible piece of textual analysis. But in the world of the Talmud, no theory gets a free pass. The other sages immediately start the cross-examination. Hold on, they ask. What about the tail? It bends. Rav Kahana's defense is that the verse implies something that can also be held straight, which the tail can't. Okay, fine, they counter. What about the ear? It can be straight and it can bend. The defense? The cut has to release the blood of the soul, the main blood flow, which a little cut to the ear just wouldn't do. So Rav Kahana's theory is clever, but it's not exactly airtight. The investigation, though, is far from over. Two more investigators, Rav Yeimar and the School of Rabbi Yishmael, they step right up with their own clues, and each one takes a totally different angle. Rav Yeimar looks at a whole different verse, with the word vazavachta, another word for slaughter. He rereads it as zavahatehu, which translates to where it flows, break it. He argues this has to be the neck. I mean, that's where the blood flows the most, right? Then, the School of Rabbi Yishmael goes back to the original verse. They suggest a tiny change in pronunciation, reading vashachat as vasacht, which they interpret as sach-hatehu, where it speaks, purify it. And where do we speak from? The throat. So the slaughter has to be at the neck. This whole back and forth really shows you the Talmud's incredible intellectual rigor. Every new theory gets hammered with questions. For the flowing theory, someone pipes up, what about the nose? For the speaking theory, what about the tongue? Just like the first theory, they are elegant, but they just can't stand up to the logical pressure test. None of them give that solid, undeniable proof. So, where does that leave our investigation?
We've got 3 brilliant attempts by some of history's sharpest legal minds to find a source for the law in the text, and every single one has led to a dead end. The written evidence, the Bible, it just refuses to give up its secrets. And then, just when it seems like the case has gone cold, the Talmud makes a dramatic pivot to the real answer. It introduces this crucial legal category, halacha l'Moshe Sinai. This literally means a law given to Moses at Sinai, and it refers to these fundamental laws that were never written in the Bible but were passed down through an unbroken oral tradition, from teacher to student, generation after generation.
So here it is, the big reveal. The detectives were looking in the wrong place the whole time. The proof wasn't hidden in some clever wordplay in a biblical verse. The law of slaughtering at the neck is so fundamental, so ancient that its authority comes directly from that oral tradition starting at Sinai. The answer wasn't in the case file, it was in the collective memory of the entire legal system.
Okay, but that brings up one last really important question. If the oral tradition is the real source, then what was the point of all that crazy textual analysis? Do those biblical verses about slaughter just not teach us anything?
The Talmud concludes that no, the verses absolutely do have a legal purpose. It's just not the one the sages were originally looking for. They teach a different, but related, law, that while you have to cut the simanim at the neck, you shouldn't completely sever the head in the process. So the text still holds vital meaning.
And in a final, just classic Talmudic twist, right after concluding the source's oral tradition, the text brings in another sage, Rabbi Ḥiyya, who offers a completely new argument for how you can derive the law from the written text after all. It's the perfect reminder that in this world of ideas, the conversation, the search for meaning, it is never, ever truly over.
So what's the big takeaway from our ancient detective story? It shows us that some of our most basic, foundational rules aren't actually written down anywhere. They're carried in tradition. And that kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What unspoken assumptions, what unwritten laws shape our own legal systems, our cultures, and maybe even our own lives today?